Okay, this is going to take a little longer than the typical request for concurrence because this is far from a typical item. In fact, I'm going to say a little later, I think we're talking about a once-in-a-generation sort of opportunity here. When I go back a little bit, just to refresh you on where we've been and for others who might be listening to this, you heard presentations from Human Resources and Management and Budget about our concerns on our ability to recruit, engage, and retain employees. As business items have come to you, you've heard from other directors about their concerns about getting employees. And I think in casual conversation, just around the organization, you've heard from probably many people about concerns in different ways on this topic. And all of you, at one time or another, have shared your concerns about what is going on and what we can do about this. And when we talk about concerns, there's a lot of things in the mix, but just, again, to give people a little sense of what we're talking about, one is a lack of applications. We're posting jobs and we're just not getting many applications, sometimes no applications. Where we are getting applications, often they're not good applications. They're people who just aren't qualified for the job. Because of those things, we find ourselves reposting jobs, sometimes twice, 3 times, and that's led to a growing number of jobs that we have posted until filled now. We're not even putting a date on it, we're just saying, keep the applications coming until we find somebody. We're also finding a growing problem with people who are going through the entire process and getting to the point where we're saying, we want you to come work for Carroll County, and they're rejecting the offer. We have problems with compression. One, we talked about a lot in the budget process. The mandated changes to minimum wage are creating compression with the lower end of our pay scale, but we have compression problems in other ways. We know where we haven't given salary increases, or salary increases have been largely devoted to COLAs. Scales move, but people don't move through the scale, meaning people are getting closer and closer to each other. We have problems where sometimes moves to supervisory positions don't look that appealing because the amount of money they're going to get for taking on the new responsibilities just doesn't seem all that attractive. And we have concern about looming retirements, and I use looming with intent. This is hanging over us. We know. You've already seen quite a few people go, and people who've been here, done it, know their stuff, and now we're picking up after them. But there's more to come. We don't know the timing, but we know people are going to be leaving.
And we lose all that institutional knowledge.
Yes. So the board has heard all this and recognized we have a problem, and you asked us what are some solutions. So as Roberta mentioned, in August, you took the first step. You approved us issuing a request for proposals, an RFP, to look for a firm that could help us with this, and also to seek out an existing competitively bid contract for the same purposes. We chose that parallel process because of time concerns. And the time concerns were driven because of your desire to have this information available in time for the next budget process. The reality of the size of this job and meeting that time frame is it's not a nice, neat fit, and we needed all the time we could get. Finding an existing contract would be a shorter process than an RFP process, meaning we have more time left to do the work. So we issued an RFP basically in case we could not find an existing contract. And with the RFP, we also needed to acknowledge the possibility that we might not get bids on the entire package. Remember, there's 3 pieces to this. And if it played out that way, that might mean we are working with multiple vendors. Now, these things are all tightly entwined. Working with different vendors on different pieces of this would not be how we want to do this, but that was a possibility. There was also the possibility that we would get no responsive bids, and you don't know until you get there. So given our circumstances, our clear preference was to find an existing contract if we could. Now, in doing that, you need to understand there's not some place we can go and just say, let's see all the existing contracts so we can work our way through them. This is more like getting to a pile of leaves and searching, try and find the leaf that you want. And we were working at that, and we had good luck, I'd say. We came across a neighbor who had something that matched up well with what we wanted to try to do. So we found that contract. We came to agreement with a vendor on how we could make that work here, which is what leads us to being here today. Now, after we found that contract, we pulled back the RFP. And we knew that these parallel processes were a less than ideal situation. We understood there was a possibility that if we found an existing contract, we could end up with an unhappy bidder who's saying, wait a second, what about us? And in fact, that has happened. We have heard from an unhappy bidder. And we regret that it played out that way. But given the time constraints we had, we just didn't see any other path forward except to try to go at it in two different ways. So again, that brings us today and the request for concurrence. Now, using an existing competitively bid contract, we worked with the vendor to agree on a scope of work that both meets our needs, what are we trying to get out of this, and that they are saying, yes, we can get this done in the time frame that we're talking about. One thing we wanted to avoid was get an agreement with somebody who says, oh yeah, we can do that, and then find out that they couldn't. And the thing that's driving this, getting this in the budget process for you, not happening. So we've worked very hard to try and make sure we believe that what we're bringing to you is actually doable. Okay, let's study. I talked about there's three pieces. It's going to look at organizational design. It's going to look at classifications, and it's going to look at compensation. These are all necessary pieces of considering that big idea. How do we attract, engage, and retain employees? Another way to think about this, instead of in this kind of HR world talk, is we want to be looking at how we provide services. What positions do you need to provide those services? And then how do you compensate the people who are doing that work? And as we go through this process, I want to make sure you understand, we're going to be working very closely with the vendor. This is not just something they go off and do. This is going to be a lot of work for us as well. Now, part of this is just about providing stuff to them. We're going to need to give them data. We're going to need to give them our positions. We're going to need to give them history and context to help them understand who Carroll County is and how we work and how we got to where we are today. But it's also going to be about kind of evaluating where they're going, what they're finding. We can't afford to just wait to the end to say, what did you figure out, and then react to this. We want to get to the end in a position to do something about this. So we're going to be working with them along the way to try and get to an end product that is going to be useful to you and to the organization. This is a good place to stop and emphasize an important idea. I kind of said this, but I think it's so big I want to just say it clearly again. While individuals have interest in seeing their compensation go up, I don't think you'd find many people in the building who'd say, a raise, don't worry about it, I don't need that. People care, but that's not what this is about. That's not what's driving this effort. From an organization point of view, we have concerns about our ability to provide services. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to figure out how do we continue providing the services that people expect. If we get your approval today, here's what the timeline will look like. We'll have a kickoff with Siegel the first week of October. We need to get right to work on this. We don't have any time to waste here. The work will begin with the organization design part of this. This is looking at how are we structured? Are there changes we should make? How do we provide services? Can our processes be improved in some way? All of these questions will have implications for how we classify our positions and how we compensate our positions. So this needs to be leading the way. If you did this in a different way, what you could come up against is you go through and you figure out your classifications, then you change the organization, which would mean you have to reconsider the choices you already made. We don't want to do that. The classification and compensation portions of this are going to look at all of our positions, the relationships between our positions, and how our compensation compares to the market. So part of this is about how we make sure we've got it right internally, but then it's also comparing us to what's going on around us. And I say a market comparison. Make no mistake, we are in a market. We're competing for people, and right now, we're not competing well. And our competition is other local governments, but it's not just local governments. We're competing against the private sector. Now, there are some places where we will never be able to go up against the private sector for certain positions. They're just going to pay more than we're ever going to be able to consider. But there are places where this is relevant to us. And I'm not saying this is the only one, but we're watching McDonald's and Walmarts and those businesses raise their pay. That's changing our ability to attract people to some of our jobs. There's just no getting around it. We have to think about how are we going to deal with this. So we should have a market survey and an estimated budget impact of that in late March, which will be in time to consider for the budget process. It would be really good for us to have that information earlier than that, but we worked hard to make sure that it at least could be available in time to still get consideration as we go through the process. Much of the work will be done by the end of May. Again, facing the realities of the time we have, some of the work won't be done until the end of June. Ideally, we would have all this done in March or in February, but that's just not possible. So we're doing our best to work with the realities of how much time this is going to take. And then in July, we'll come to you with a series of budget transfers to take money from some holding place to get it out to all the appropriate places where it would be spent. Now, on Monday, there's a cost to this. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anybody to just say, let us help.
Charity work.
So the cost of doing this organization design, classification, and compensation work is $300,000. $300,000 is a lot of money. There's no getting around it. I believe we need to do this, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about my thinking on that in just a second. Back to Commissioner Rothstein's comment earlier. We will both need you to approve this contract for concurrence and to approve a transfer from the reserve for contingencies to my budget. This had to go somewhere. There's no obvious place to put it, so we're just going to put it in my budget. Don't worry, it doesn't give me any room to spend any other money that I wouldn't have spent otherwise. It just gets this study paid for. Now, I said earlier, I think we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity. I've been here for 27 years, and we have not done anything like this, not once. And I don't know when the next time is going to be. But it's not just about we haven't done this. There's a growing need for us to do it. You know, our budget and our ability to provide services have been getting squeezed for decades. We were hurt in the Great Recession, and we've stabilized, but we never really recovered. You know, we've talked about some of our problems. Those problems are not going away, and in fact, they're getting worse. There's some statistics that HR shared with you previously. We're actually seeing things worse than what we told you a month ago, or 2 months ago, or 3 months ago. There's no reason to think things are going to get better on their own. You've already noted the concerns that are making their way to you. And I think I can say with absolute confidence, if we don't do something to change where we are, those things are still going to keep coming to you, except we're going to be dealing with them in a piecemeal way. Let's take care of this problem, then we'll take care of this problem. And part of what comes out of that is every time we make one of those moves, there are implications for other parts of the organization that aren't being considered. So we fix one problem, but maybe we create 3 other problems. This cries out, I think, for a comprehensive look and solution. Now, you know my concerns about our fiscal position. You know, I'm not the one sitting here saying, don't worry, everything's okay. And you also hear me all the time saying, we need to be careful. We need to think about the implications of what we're doing here. So when I come saying that we need to spend money on this survey and then the money that's going to come to do something about what would come out of it, I'm not coming to this casually. I'm coming to you because I deeply believe we have to do something. And if we want to be able to keep providing the levels of service, the mix of services, and the levels of service that we have out there, if we want to keep doing that, I believe we are going to have to do something, or you're going to be faced with choices to say, what do we stop doing? So that's where we've been, where we are, and a little bit about where we're heading. We can take questions from you now if you have any. After questions, or if there are none, then we'd be looking for two actions, one for concurrence on this contract and one to approve the transfer from reserve for contingencies to management and budget administration.